Hello, everybody. It is Tara Boothby and Annie Abernethy. Now I'm all embarrassed to say your name. I know Annie forever, but I just butchered your last name.
Abernethy. Just say
Abernethy.
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 There you
Um,
go. It helps if you have a British accent, perhaps. Since it's
Perhaps
Scottish,
Annie Abernethy, but I always call you Annie, so I'm just going to stick with Annie.
yeah, it's probably a good choice.
Good
Use
choice.
my name. Yeah.
And Annie is a licensed professional counselor down in Richmond, Virginia. And I'm a psychologist up in Alberta, Canada. So we have this sort of cool people helping thing in common, amongst many other things. And so, Annie, thank you for hopping on a call with me.
Absolutely. My pleasure.
Yeah, it's been a while. So it's been what, 8 months, 9 months since we've seen each other?
Yeah, 10. It was last June, right? So,
Last June.
yeah. hmm
Yeah. Yeah, so this conversation, I've been talking with several of our friends just about what we think about restoration, some of the pain we're noticing with people going through trying to understand spiritual abuse, institutional trauma. I know this is near and dear to your heart. This is one of the ways that you really work with people in your practice. So maybe you could just start there, Annie. Like, how do you work with people who use the word deconstructing?
Yeah, sometimes the people that come in haven't found the word yet. They don't know what word to use. So we don't always use that word. And I know there's alarm over the word because of its philosophical background and but whatever term is useful for looking at your spiritual experience and identifying the places that felt abusive or felt controlling or felt um, overwhelming emotionally. So and sometimes the people that come in for counseling with me don't even recognize at first, and I hope I'm not like doing my own brainwashing here, but don't always recognize at first that their concept of God is the thing that drives their discontent in almost every other aspect of their lives.
Mm.
I think that's really key is trying to get to the root of why they're feeling certain ways. And to me, maybe because I'm looking for it, it often feels like there's a sense of this is how God is, and this is how people who represent God expect me to behave based on who God is. And so I have to measure up and I can't, and I don't know what's wrong with me.
Yes.
So that tends to be a lot, probably in what you experience too, right?
Yeah, and I mean, I with people in conversation with friends, and then for myself. And
Yeah.
I like how you're saying this, the view of God piece
hmm
and this idea that there's this perfect ultimate God and other people are somehow perfectly getting it better. And
Mm,
then I'm left with me. And I mean,
that's a shame.
it's a total shame when we're stuck with ourselves and it's like everybody else is getting this and I'm not.
What what I liken it to is the verses in scripture that I realize I have the way that I have received them or the way that I have interpreted them or the way they've made me feel. And one of those is in Hebrews when it talks about the great cloud of witnesses. My feeling has always been, oh shit, everyone's watching. And I know I'm doing it wrong, you know? Instead of it being a comforting, like these are cheerleaders, it's like a boardroom and they're all going mm, mm. Oh, here she goes again. you know so they become proxies for the chairman of the board, the big guy.
Yes.
And so it becomes this whole cloud of witnesses, including parents, including all of the pastors I've ever had, including all of the institutions, which are just a group of people, but we personify them, and they have this feeling and this way of being that controls us.
Yeah, I know. And I mean, the great cloud of witnesses, and uh, however we view that and entering into it, because I had a similar experience. I remember when my grandma died, I was an adult, and all of a sudden I'm like, she's in this great cloud of witnesses watching me, like
Yeah,
everything. I'm having sex with my husband and people are watching me. Like it's this very
yeah,
invasive,
yeah,
crazy thing. But
yeah.
sorry to go there, but it's, Annie. Uh and it
I'm surprised you have sex. That's just
isn't that
uncalled
strange?
for.
It's so bizarre that people have
You
sex lives.
Canadians.
It's only Canadians.
Mhm.
Um, but the great cloud of witnesses, I nerded out in a St. Stephen's University course with Ron Dart on Dante's Divine Commedia, and the great
Mm,
cloud of witnesses in Purgatorio. It's just like encouragement. And like Thomas Merton talks about the great cloud of witnesses as like this collective we enter into when we are embodying our liturgy, and this
mm,
beautiful like belongingness,
mm.
not the jury of the judge.
Yeah. Which is interesting because in some ways, I have lost both my parents now. And once they have entered that cloud, I often think, okay, they understand now.
Mm,
Like they understand, they have Jesus explaining it to them, or they have the mind of Christ more completely. Um, but I don't know how magically that happens. And the problem is not the great cloud of witnesses that is eternal and that has gone before. It's the ones we're living in community with now. And they,
mm,
much like we, are very judgmental. And
yeah.
it's like we can't, even though we're saying these people have joined the cloud of witnesses or it's something we're a part of, we want to experience that in real time, but it's hard to do with living people because
Mm,
they rub us, they question us, they look askance, or all the things that we do too. We
yeah.
just don't know how to be an encouraging cloud of witness without being dead.
And when you say it like that, that's so important, because we, again, we can think about these mysterious concepts, the mystery that we're trying to contain in our human language, in such othering ways. Like this, the great
Right?
cloud of witnesses is this like all access pass that somebody who's dead gets, but then it's
Yeah,
this
yeah.
living in our collective, this
Hmm.
inclusive life where we're alongside of all types of people. We're all just walking each other home.
Oh,
That's Ram
oh,
Dass. That's Ram Dass. And I think of these things where it's like, in my old view, I shouldn't know about Ram Dass and I shouldn't speak about him and I shouldn't quote him. But there's these beautiful other people who are not others.
yeah. You and I were both a part of the Muslim Christian get
Yes.
together
Yeah.
in November, December. I can't remember when that
Yeah.
was.
December 2024, SSU University put something on for the Peace and Justice, um, uh, whatever degree. And it was a beautiful online weekend.
I only got to experience the one day, but I was there in person and got to have lunch with Safi and his wife and some other people and um, feel that connection that almost was more congenial than, within my own tribe. Um, which does beg the question, why is it that the people that are just outside of our circle are the ones that rub us the worst? And those who are many steps beyond, we can we can be accepting of. I think
Yeah.
that's a reprimand.
I do too. And I mean, even the othering of, like, I was raised conservative Christian, North American Christian. So we really would other Muslims in particular in my
Mhm.
tradition. And I don't know if I've shared this story on these conversations, but I went to a baby baya of my dear friend and colleague, and I went
What is
into,
that?
it's like the baby baptism, the baby dedication, however your tradition might say
Okay.
it. There's a little baby, all the community comes together. I went in and sort of learning the way of this other cultural group, taking shoes off, sitting on the floor. But what was beautiful was the amount of people who came up to me and said, we all believe in the same God. And the final person who said it to me was my friend's husband, Ali. He said, we all believe in the same God. And I said, Ali, if you came to my church, nobody would say that to you.
Yeah.
And it was, I felt like an honoring and saying that to him and a gratefulness, but also like a, 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 a very sorrowful truth.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It hurts.
it does
It
hurt.
does.
Yeah, so there's all these things, even when we touch on the conversation of what you and I hope to do as some people who are trying to discover that God is loving in our practice. And as we talk about that, then we just naturally fall into many different places where we are rediscovering and rediscovering God's love.
Hmm.
Because
Yeah.
we were kind of talking about this before, the physician heal thyself. And of course, we refer
Mm.
to ourselves in the same collective as doctors, right, Annie?
Of course. I
Of
mean,
course.
look at all the books.
All those books.
Yeah. It's all fiction, but whatever. Um, yeah. Um, yeah. I lost my train. My husband's talking in the other room in a meeting, so I'm distracted a little bit. Um, Last night, my husband and I, a couple days ago, I got a text from a friend, or we had lunch, that's what it was. And she said, did you know this person and this person, their two families are no longer going to our church? And I said, really? Why? Now, our church is a loose term. We helped to start it about 3 years ago, 23. And it has grown and changed like all churches should. Um, but there has been enough of my own personal uh, abusive interactions with the lead pastor that I had to stop attending regularly, sort of weaned myself off during COVID and keep trying to go back. But we met with them, this couple, I found out that they had left. And so I reached out and said, we'd love to talk and hear what happened, because my husband still attends, he plays in the band, and my son, who has special needs, is honestly one of the cornerstones of the church. And if he left, I don't, yeah, people would notice and it would be very concerning. So we met with them and heard again we sat for 4 hours, them telling us their story. And this is a couple who works in um my understanding is of group dynamics in the corporate world or in businesses, how to do conversation, how to reach consensus. They're very much involved in the human resources part and conflict resolution. And they tried all the things. They met with this person, with that person. They went to the elders. They went to another elder, a third elder, and just the ways that it ended up with leadership, primarily the former pastor, who was the founding pastor, and the current pastor, just accusing them of pride and of causing disunity and and basically not buckling under. And, we know that people in these types of positions, it's so much easier for them to be a narcissist in these positions because, in fact, one of the pastors that I have talked to, when we were talking about power, and I mentioned, his power, he said, "What are you talking about? I don't have any power." And I was stunned to hear a pastor say that. Like, do they really not recognize the power that they have? Is that the problem? Not recognizing the influence that they have?
Mm.
And of course, it's going to vary from person to person. But the thing that seems to continually come up, and my husband and I were talking about it, is this sense of authority. Who has it? Who wants it? What is it for? Um, and what scares me is that that sense of authority and power and even control seems to be for these people something about the image of God that they're
Mm-hmm.
harnessing.
Yeah.
And that's where I'm terrified because they're saying things like, you need to obey, you need to submit to authority. And I'm your pastor. And then you think of Jesus turning to his disciples and say, I no longer call you my servants, I call you my friends. And you wonder what has happened in our understanding of group dynamics as a body of Christ that has changed. People, I'm sorry, I'm babbling now, but people talk often about, I think I've heard Bradley say this, Bradley Tersak and Paul Young and others like that, you know, Jesus' time on earth, he was just slumming it and he was hiding under this cloak of humility. But when he comes back in Revelation, what we've looked at that as a future prediction of a returning king, and he's going to take names, and you know those two images don't match up. The Jesus of the New Testament and this concept that I think has taken, especially the United States, in
Mm-hmm.
its hold, that power and control are the highest form of authority instead of what Jesus came to show, which was meekness and understanding and spending 3 years with someone he knew was probably going to cost him his life.
Well, somebody would, or
Yeah,
people.
yeah.
People killed Jesus. But I love what you're saying too, because I have been thinking about, I do think about our God complex, and like when we think that we contribute and we save people, or when I believed in a violent God, I could double down, and the things that caused me the most pain about mistakes with people, especially people I was in charge of,
Mm,
was when I thought that there was something, that God is in control, God is all powerful, and I am, you know, I don't have power. And yet, if somebody needs correction under my authority, there's a place where violence happens in God. So then we can double down. Somebody gets growly. Well, my job then is to growl louder.
mm,
But I've been thinking, I read one of the most influential books I've just recently read is Eric Janssen's Ponder. And it's about prophecy and desensationalizing and taking away our God complex with some of these beautiful ways that we participate. Um, and this idea that, Jesus came in a humble way. And I think what we're noticing, what I'm hearing is Jesus, whether you believe Jesus is God, whether you believe the story is actual historic or it's a story in a book, there's still this powerful truth in the story of a God living without a God complex in a nonviolent way. And so
Man.
that,
Yeah,
yeah, that transforms everything else we read in these poetic, metaphorical, all the letters back and forth, all these things where I remember Gordon Fee. Now I'm rambling.
that's all
This
right.
this what we do, Annie and I. Gordon Fee, I listened to one of his conversations on YouTube about Revelation and how to read it. He said, you don't read a legal letter in poetry the same way. And
Hopefully.
hopefully, oh my word, I saw somebody who was reading poetry through a legal lens the other day. I'm like, dude,
That's
this is
horrible.
this
What a
is your
bad idea.
this is not working for me. But the God complex.
Yeah, that God didn't even have. We are so afraid, I think, for me, what I have recognized all my life is I have been trying so hard not to be human, as if as if my divination
Yeah.
was the process of becoming less human
Mm,
instead of becoming more fully human,
yes.
which includes the divine. And I think that's the subtlety of what, I mean, it shouldn't have been subtlety, but when I was coming up, it was the subtlety of what Jesus did. Instead of it being, he's become human and now all humanity is sanctified because we share in the experience of God, it was, look at what he did for you. He came down and became a person to save you. Aren't you just amazed? I mean, he would stoop that low instead of recognizing that that's what elevates us. And so everything, we've got it so twisted. Our sense of authority and power and control we have put to the divine, when really it's the worst of our humanity. But it's not what being human is. It's the
Mm.
worst part of the temptation to be subhuman.
So this is, I mean, what I hear you saying, and this is so fresh right now, Annie, is the longing, or I agree, like this, like don't be human, our humanness, our flesh. There's a abusey word, your flesh. Um, we're disembodied. So when we're not fully in our body psychologically, we are at risk of making bad decisions, at, not thinking things through, not considering our perceptions, and we get really automatic. So that's a risky piece psychologically, a trauma-y.
Mhm.
But there's also this leaning into honoring our full humanity. And when we give all power and authority to God without really understanding our participation and this reciprocity in our relationship, our dyadic connection.
Participation. Yes.
Yes. And there's a corporate participation. That's this cloud of
Mhm.
witnesses thing, is that we're corporate and we're individual. But I give all my power away and I run the risk of being unchecked. Because if God is all
Mm,
powerful, but I'm in a position of authority,
mm.
I'm not really thinking through my position of authority. So pastoring, providing care like you or I do. I mean, I think I've done a great job of providing care for a long time. There's a small list of blunders, but those
Mm.
blunders are the parts that are painful for me.
Sure.
And you, I'm sure, it's like we
Yeah.
remember
Yeah.
those real, like, why did I,
Oh,
that was not of love's kind.
right. Yeah. This whole concept of I must decrease, but he must increase, which, yes,
Mm.
is a scripture verse. But the point of it coming from the mouth of John the Baptist, or was it Paul? Maybe it was Paul. Who said that? Oh, no. Theology major. Um, I think the concept is not I disappear and he fills all so that I no longer matter, because that's Buddhism. I mean, that's not, returning to the allness,
Although
the
I
drop
do
of
think,
water into the
yeah, a little bit of Buddhism definitely helps our Christianity.
sure. Yes, yes, yes. Because there's a humility in that we don't quite attain. But it's not a me or God situation. It's you wake up in the morning and you have a conversation, God, and you say, what what are we gonna do today? And I think sometimes he goes, I don't know. And they're like the buzzards on the Jungle Book. I don't know. What do you want to do today? I don't know. What do you want to do today? And it's like, I don't, maybe he wants me to sit and watch the display he's creating outside my window. What if he wants to entertain me? He's like, I created all this to watch you delight in it.
Yeah,
And you want to go read your Bible? Look up.
yeah.
Um, so I got distracted there, but just the idea that this participation is key
Yeah,
because
participation.
participation
Mhm,
blocks a sense of who's in control and who's in
mhm.
authority and who does what when. If we're collaborating, then it's always a give and take. And obedience can become so one-dimensional that we think all we do is run to God, ask him to tell us what to do, and we leave
Yeah,
and go do it. Now there's no relationship, there's no conversation. It's just tell me what to do and I'll go do it. Like, don't get all up in my life. Just tell me I'm doing the right things and I'll do them. And it's a very disembodied life. It's a very unintegrated way of living.
yeah, it's
Inhuman.
behavioral. It's inhuman. It's all this like perform, the behavioralism, the disembodiment. And there's in that reciprocal space. And the word collaborative is beautiful. Like as a parent,
Laboring together.
laboring
Yeah.
together or enjoying together, delighting together, experiencing together first, and then the labor. There's some
Yeah.
labor, but
Yeah.
the joy and the beauty, and you think parenting or leadership, not they do not have to be collaborative experiences. But when we collaborate, the work and the fruit with the children, the work of the fruit with the client, the work, the fruit with the people we're in charge of is so much better. So when we sit with somebody who's endured The Subtlety of Spiritual Abuse is an old book that I had. I lent it to a client. So you know what that means. I gave it away.
You'll
I
never
gave
see
it
it again.
away. It was a great little old book. But the subtle power of spiritual abuse is often these little
Mm,
things. Abuse can be so hidden in plain sight. Somebody in
mm,
authority says, "Oh, your pride."
mm.
And it's a shot right to the heart. Whereas again, to go back to like what Jansen's book, Ponder is really noticing is when we are participating in relationship with the human God, Jesus,
That
who's
that itself is scandalous to say that.
it's scandalous, baby, but we are people helpers and we
I mean, walk up
scandalize.
to any person at your church and say, Our God is human. And they'll be like, Well, yeah, but oh, he's human. Our God is human.
Yes. And suffered. And like I've never been stabbed, but I mean, Jesus had a human experience of
Next
being
time I see
stabbed.
you, sweetie.
No, Annie.
Not me. I'll
Oh,
pay someone.
she's just kidding. He's like the
Just
Canadians.
kidding.
She is American to the Canadian audience, but she's just kidding.
We're not all stabby down here.
No, no. But it's this, power is an addiction.
Mm,
We can become addicted and we want
mm.
to have the right words and ascribe the right words, but so much of this collaborative experience, collaboration is a choice, participation is a choice,
And so
reciprocity.
much,
Go ahead.
yes. Well, in the stories I've heard and the stories I've been a part of, within institutions, um, churches, and have a harrowing boarding school experience too, that
Mhm.
Christian boarding school experience that plays into this too. There's often a sense from the authority figures or the leadership of, we represent the school or we represent the church. And there's a boundary between the leadership and the plebeians, the people underneath. It's like, you can't say these things about our church, my church, or whatever. And we are the church. We are the school. What do you mean we can't do this or that, or the school says this, or the people embody the organism. When it becomes an organization and stops being an
Mhm.
organism, to me, that's when the breakdown occurs, because now it's dehumanized, it's systematized. I am convinced that this is part of the powers and the principalities. I don't know. Have you read any Henry Wink?
No, I haven't.
Is it Henry Wink? Or am I thinking of Henry Winkler? The Fonz. Dude,
You can give me the
we're
title.
gonna
I'll put
have
it below.
to
Just a sec.
I'm gonna have to pull that up.
Mhm.
Don't read anything written by the, actually, it's probably good, whatever he wrote.
Word to
But
the audience, if
Wink,
you read too many books, it's hard for you to remember who wrote which one.
that's it. It's hard being brilliant and
Because
well read.
I want to stick with what you're saying because this is
Yeah.
amazing. So when we lose sight of the organism and we just lean into the organization or the system, there's this real detriment. So keep going with this, Annie, because this is like
Yeah, no,
profound.
I think, you know, if you look at the way that Jesus and his disciples seem to have interacted, you didn't get a sense from the Gospels, and maybe that's because they were written by men who didn't see how the women were organizing everything in the background. Maybe. Um, we we forget that it's so organic and it happens in front of us, and he didn't come to start a system, right? He didn't come to start a religion. He came to show us how to be human in relationship and how to invite people into an experience of our humanity that connects with the divine in a real tangible way. Um, Now, that being said, we do need organization and structure. I just think that is the most dangerous part. I honestly think that the modern day concept of an American westernized church organization, I feel like it's almost beyond repair. Like, the,
Yeah.
do you feel that way?
Well, it's so big. I think of the Benedictine monk code where it was like the shepherd knows the name of his sheep.
Hmm.
And so these super churches, and like for me, part of my getting lost in the wasteland was I could lie to myself and pretend I was going to church because in a super church where I wanted autonomy and anonymity, I could hide and eventually I could just not go
Hmm.
and sit alone in my individualistic culture,
Hmm.
avoid the corporate worship, avoid the accountability. And there's a lot of human error of being unaccountable to good relationships and bad relationships. But then
Mm.
spiritually, I also lost that sense of accountability, lost the sense of of what was good about being raised in the church was, I'll call it like grandma's house. Like there's this beautiful love that I have for my old experience of crawling under the pews in the sanctuary and running around the hallways and being with this family. the cloud of witnesses, no matter what was being preached or taught, or how
Mm,
shameful
it is
I felt.
beautiful.
Yeah, but that loss,
It's terrible.
it is terrible
You
and it's
know,
wrong.
mm,
And it's a money machine.
mhm.
So I ran into this pastor, and it was a certain denomination where I ran into this,
Did you
they
kill him?
no, I didn't. Yeah,
I meant with your car.
we were in this hot
So
tub.
sorry, dude.
Actually, I was with my husband, but I was in a hot tub, and this pastor came into the hot tub.
As
So I
one
was just,
does. Okay.
his wife was there. It was great. So we were
Yeah,
talking,
okay.
but this certain denomination where they don't always like to say their denomination. And he said, I'm
Hmm.
here at this town and we're the only church. So I'm like, I know what church it is. And I'm
Yeah.
here to do the church is failing because they have a congregation of 30. And so
The
I've come.
church never fails. That's what's the church can't fail.
And he said, I'm here to do
But
corporate restructuring. And I'm like, ah, it's just this the shepherd and the sheep. And if we sit and meditate on that image of the shepherd in the field with his sheep,
it
and what
seems
is,
so bucolic and like,
yeah,
how hard can that be, right?
yeah, but there's this the organism and the organic is disconnected from the system that is putting pressure on this beautiful man who's sacrificing, going to this remote place to sit in a hot tub with some strangers and try to like figure out how to have gas in his tank to go and minister and love on some people. But the corporate
Hmm.
is the pressure behind.
Yeah. Well, it's our language needs to change too. I mean, we need to stop
Mhm.
using the word church to mean a weekly club meeting in a building where you either all say the same thing at the same time or you don't speak at all.
Yeah,
And there's one man or usually who will talk for 20 minutes every week. So there's no, what is that? That's how in the world did we get to this point where we're so disconnected?
I know.
There's no vitality.
There's, well, and the mystery, leaning into the mystery, and part of it is the psychology of like as we developmentally change and shift and like we become adults, and then it's like, okay, I got to figure out how to adult. So we lose that childlike sense of mystery. It's like I
Mhm.
love talking to my children about spiritual things and not forcing a correction because they're in this mystery. But I when I was a child, I mean, I think I was an adolescent, junior high-ish, and my friend, I might have been staying at their house for the weekend, and the dad chose not to go to church. And the teenage brother made the joke that dad had said that he didn't want to go to church because he didn't like the word of gourd. And our pastor's name was Gourd. That stuck with me. And I was like, oh, I think I should think that's wrong. But there was already this sort of wondering of like, what does that actually mean? These are really, they were smart, very, very smart people.
Mhm. Yeah.
And that cheeky, hot emotion that we connect when we start to really realize I don't believe everything that I'm supposed to believe.
This belief control thing is uh, up until the almost the day my mother died, which was in January.
Yeah.
We had repeated conversations where she was wanting to understand what I believed and why it was different from what she had taught me, and would I still be in heaven? Um, and she kept going back to, but but you prayed the prayer, right? I mean, you you asked Jesus, and all this stuff. What I ended up every time she would ask, I finally said, Mom, I didn't say all the things because I knew she wouldn't want to engage in that way, but I said, stop asking me that and maybe ask me, do you love Jesus more today than you did yesterday? If you want to check up on my faith, ask me something like that. Um, but this whole idea of somehow it's our God-given right as accountability partners with people to look into their spiritual life and check and just be sure that you're doing things a certain way, or um, that you believe the right things. How can I say to you, Tara, what do you believe about XYZ? Here you tell me, and then I decide whether or not I'm okay with the way that you've presented it. The problem here is that neither one of us is absolutely sure that that's what we believe. We've been taught that's what we believe. We've learned to articulate it, but we don't know our own hearts. And so why are we trying to judge other people's hearts when only God sees that?
Yeah, and because if we do not know our pure of heartness, then we do not know our own heart. Because our identity is that we are pure of heart. We
Uh,
belong in this beautiful heart of love that is the divine love.
we've been given a heart of flesh, right? Not of stone. We have the mind of Christ.
Mm.
And um, oh, there was something you said that, oh, when I think of scriptures that talk about confession or our hearts, especially Psalm 139, the prayer is, you search my heart, God. You see if there's any wicked way in me. Um, confess your sins one to another, because we can check up on each other and say, this is what I'm seeing. Like, sounds like I'm saying the opposite of what I was saying earlier. But if I'm confessing my sin, I'm the one initiating. I'm saying, this is something I'm struggling with, instead of someone saying, you have a problem here. We're putting it out there and saying, help me with this. Um, but God and others help us. We're not supposed to go digging. I don't think we're supposed to go spelunking in the caverns of our own wickedness. That I don't think we're supposed to do that.
Not
I think
alone,
we're
anyhow.
supposed to let God, yeah. And yes. And in some ways, I don't know about you, Tara, but in some ways as a therapist, there are times when I feel like it's a priestly function,
Hmm.
that that we're entering into a place with these people of of offering solace and forgiveness, and walking into those dark places with them and saying, don't be afraid, I'm here too. And um, you're not alone in your own scary, gross place. We can be there together, and I can mediate the love of God in that moment.
Yeah, I'll meet you in your unmeetable place is the therapist position. And Tony
I don't
Zerbin and
know.
I or go
Yeah,
I was just gonna say Tony Zerbin and I did a conversation a few weeks ago, and he really calls us the secular priest.
I
Um,
love it. I
I
think
do
it's,
too. We got rid of confession in the North American church, many traditions, but you think of confession. So we misconstrue what it is. Like you go in and there's this judgy priest and he's going to be like, oh, you despicable, you go penance. But really, a confession is I go, I say, and a priest says, you know what? Go reflect on Jesus or go reflect on the cloud of witnesses like Mary. And if you don't know how to pray for yourself, you can pray, Mary, pray for me. That is a Hail Mary, right? That is like, Mother Mary, pray for me. And it was about this time last year, actually, I had so much anxiety. My book was coming out. And I texted Paul Young and I was like, Paul, I'm like, I just panic attack and I don't know how to pray. And he didn't go like, oh, well, you might be going to hell because you don't know how to pray. Paul said, that's okay. If you don't know how to pray, maybe you could pray, Lord, have mercy.
mm, yeah.
And I was like, that was a priestly moment. I
Mhm.
confessed. He didn't tell me I was being prideful or I was worried about my own ego or all the things that were probably true. He recommended, he collaborated and said, this could work. And it was
Yeah.
palatable for me. That was a palatable prayer. I couldn't pray more than that for a really long time.
He pointed you to a quiet meadow
Yes, where
instead of, yeah, instead of a, you know, Sunday morning church service with a, it was go sit in the meadow where the shepherd is, learn to
yes.
eat the green grass and lie down by the still waters. Like that's not just for people who are obedient and doing everything right. That's for
Yeah.
people who need a break from trying so hard.
Yeah, and I want to point to, because I mean, I shared a little bit about my old view of the church, and it's my experience, and I think part of the healing, my hope for my own spiritual healing and my hope for others is that we want to get to a place where we can look back on our spiritual origins, our own roots. We're not cutting the roots off. You need the
Right.
roots. You want them
Yeah,
there.
yeah,
But we
yeah,
want to see the roots as both good and bad. So I
right.
the more I can, and you have so much story with your being raised as a missionary's child and being in a missionary residential school. But I remember one of the stories you told me was about eating mangoes. And to me, that was like, I don't know, because you can lean into whatever stories, but you told me the story about eating mangoes. And I was like, that's one of the good memories out of all the bad of like there
And maybe
was
one of the most sacred,
yes,
those that might be a more sacred memory than any of the others.
yeah. So okay, are you okay with telling that story? Because now leaned, I'm like, I've
I don't
only
know what
told you.
story. I mean,
You just were talking about you would go harvest your own mangoes and how you liked
yeah.
your mangoes.
Oh man. I mean, we lived in a paradise where you walk out the door and you choose from 10 different fruit trees or plants and decide what to eat. I mean, I lived on fruit. I because the food that the institutional food I was raised on was horrible. Um, yeah, so we would climb the trees and pick the fruit usually before they were ripe, because we liked the tartness of it, and then we'd eat green mango with soy sauce and vinegar and or rock salt and chili and all kinds of things. But wouldn't it be great if those were the memories that we had of our church experience? And I think for some of us, we feel like we're not allowed to hold on to those memories, the
Mhm.
potlucks or the time most of the church went to hear somebody perform, or the time that we had that picnic, or you know, the things that weren't planned that happened that were joyous, that felt wonderful, instead of all sitting in pews facing a certain way. Why is that the church experience and none of the
The
other
get
stuff is?
Yeah, the getting it right, or like potlucks, you think of like the family who forgot or was too busy, and then they realize it's a potluck, so they have to run out and get the bucket of KFC. So the shame of
Yeah,
getting KFC, but then
yeah,
also
no.
that was the best. Everybody wanted the
Everybody was
KFC.
so grateful you brought that.
Yeah, and those moments of what's hidden in plain sight, the corporate worship is these little children rallying together, scurrying up the trees and eating
Oh
fruit
yeah.
together. I mean,
We
that's
were
communion.
constantly reprimanded. We were constantly reprimanded for that because we
Yeah,
weren't letting the fruit mature.
yeah, yeah.
Um, I
But
feel like
that
we've
it,
rambled, and I hope I've met your expectation for this because I could have gone so many different ways, and I was very distracted. I apologize, but
I think this is beautiful, Annie, and there's something very honoring about just um part of healing is being embodied and being in our own human experience. And you and I enjoy being silly about it. And
we this is the most serious we have ever been. We have never talked this deeply. Well, we've talked deeply, but we've never talked this coherently.
I
for
don't even know
an
if we
extended period of
swore.
time.
I don't think there was swear words. There wasn't too much
I
inappropriateness.
no.
But there's some of that healthy moving through part of the cynicism and the questioning of the old view and the negative view is okay. It's okay to be angry. It's okay to joke. It's okay to be sarcastic. But it's also good to find people who are spurring us on. And I think that's some of what you and I do is we just sit in our own humanness, caring about ourselves and caring about others.
And we say to each other, it's okay to want to stay in proximity to this system that hurt us because we see the good that's there, and it's okay for us to dip our toes in and step back and stay connected, church adjacent,
Yeah.
it's okay. I think Jesus is, I mean, he was always outside the gates, right? Outside the city.
Yeah.
He's he goes to those people. He's the one that comes to the ones who are on the outside. And maybe that's why we haven't felt his presence in those places as much as we could, because he's busy outside the church doors. That's kind of one of the things I've been convicted about is what I do on Sunday mornings. Maybe he's not there as much as he is that girl Ashley that stands on the corner down the street begging for food. Like, what if I just sat down with her and made some scones and we sat in the median and talked, and that was my
Yeah.
worship service.
That's beautiful, because I will say that, like I, for so long, I felt like I was sitting outside the gates and I didn't belong in. And then I realized I was like sitting outside the wrong gates and I'm in the tabernacle. But to
Yeah.
think this is like a lovely introduction for me of like, but of course, because that's Jesus is outside the gates. And Jesus isn't inside the city, that power place that's locked
Mm-mm.
behind a key. Jesus is one who's like, I'm holding the keys and I'm keeping the doors always open, which is, I think,
Amen.
I'm a student of theology, but I'm saying a big theological thing there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh,
Her
yeah,
gates will never be shut, eh?
her gates will never be shut. And it's beautiful. Um, so we're all just walking each other home, friends on the trail. Some are further along. Sometimes we think we're a little bit ahead, and then we realize we're further behind everyone else. And all those, it's a pilgrimage.
Or the destination is it's not linear either, right? It's concentric circles or, you know, I don't know.
Yeah, we need John Bayer here to like really
Yes.
help us with that.
Draw a three-dimensional symbol in two dimensions and then try to explain it to us. This has
Yeah.
been so much fun, Tara. I cannot wait to see you in a couple weeks.
Yes, definitely. So Annie and I are going to meet up in Canmore in May. And Annie, if people, so for you as a licensed professional counselor, are you restricted to Virginia? Can people in other
Yes,
states? Okay, so just Virginia,
theoretically.
just Virginia.
Um, yeah, legally I'm only supposed to work with people inside Virginia, but I there are also ways to work internationally. It's more of a restriction of working with people from other states, not so much about working with people from other countries.
Okay,
So,
okay.
and I
And
have a
if
website too.
Yes, and I'll put that down below in the description. I have
Okay.
Annie's website. And if you are interested in reaching out to Annie, you can through her website as well. If you are looking for a referral in a different region of the United States, maybe Annie knows. But Annie is definitely, Annie and I have done a little co-therapy together, and what a joy. Um,
Yeah, that was
and
pretty awesome.
it was fabulous. And I trust Annie's ability and how she cares for people and her wisdom as well. Um,
Thank you,
if
Tara.
Yeah, and if you're a survival of a residential school, Annie is one of the people that I would refer to. And if you are somebody who is starting to wonder about spiritual abuse or institutional trauma. Again, Annie is somebody that I would refer to. I will, and I do.
Thank you.
Um, yes, she's a lovely, lovely person.
Recognizing that recognizing that we are wounded healers, right? That
Oh,
we're not always going to get it right. And it's, you know, our strengths are also our weaknesses. Our wounds are also our, I don't want to say weapons, but our, our giftings, right?
our yes,
Um,
or our couch. Our wounds are our couch where we can meet people.
there we go. It's a bloody mess, but come on in. Yeah.